Hello, my name is Tobias Heiler and I'm one of the founders of BrainBoost. In this webinar, I will show you how we perform our first assessment, but of course you can also use this to perform all 5 or 10 sessions in assessment in between. I will show you how you can create easily an auto report using our software. For this, you can use several amounts of channels, 3 channels, 8 channels, or 19 plus channels. Have fun using it.
Let's start. As always, our Brain Assistant connects with many different manufacturers. If you have hardware laying around and you say, kind of sad that it doesn't connect with the Brain Assistant, please feel free to contact us and contact the manufacturer, and we're always happy to implement new hardware. So, about today's topic. The topic is about first or generally assessments and auto reports. So some people that have been working with us for quite some time know you can create some reports on the fly with our Brain Assistant, but we implemented a very nice function for assessments and first assessments and doing it with one click and auto report that is pretty, I think pretty nice and gives you a nice overview and idea of what is going on. So very short hardware. Of course, most people only have one hardware or maybe a second device laying around. And some people like we in our center, we have 2 different hardware types, one that we use for training and some we use for analysis. What is the difference? Well, in training, in many cases, you only need 1 or 2 or maybe up to 4 channels. But for analysis, of course, if you have a device that has 19 or more channels that you want to use, then you have a lot of channels and possibilities. So some people might think, if I only have 8 channels or 4 channels, can I even do an analysis? Yes or no? Of course, if you have 19 plus channels, then you can do a more intense and deeper analysis. But here are different ways in this webinar how you can use our auto report with a different amount of channels. And here's also a thing, if you have a device that supports 19 or more channels, you can also just put, and this is why it says just assessments, not first assessments. You can say, okay, it's the 3rd or 5th training. I will place 5 or 3 or 8 electrodes, even though I can do 19 plus on somebody's head, it goes fast. And then I can create an auto report. So also combine training and analysis. So these are 3 examples. Of course, there are other devices we support that have 2 channels or 4 channels or 8 channels. So it works, the auto report works also with different brands and other manufacturers. But here are examples what a lot of people have. They have, for example, 2 or 4 channel devices that would be now here represented by lots of users that use Neurofeedback Optima. Then people have an 8 channel device that they can use, and some people have 19 plus channels, which is of course pretty nice. It gives you all the options you want. Now, the word mapping. Some people are new in the webinar today, but I talked about mapping in some former webinars. Once in a while, I like to address that. I will explain this for some people that are not aware of what do I mean with mapping. With a device that has 2 or 4 channels, for example, you need to do an analysis, to do a report, create an auto report. You need to create a custom mapping. What does that mean? Where do I place electrodes? I will come in more depth to that topic. With devices that have, for example, here 8 channels, you can use a custom mapping, or you maybe have a cap that already has the electrodes installed, so fixed in place. And if you have a 19 plus device, you will have caps that have the full electrodes all in the place already. You just apply it on your head and then just need to make sure there's a good signal. So this is what you need to be aware of, how to create a custom mapping. So what does that mean? You choose channels and place electrodes freely, so wherever you like. What does that mean? Well, in a training, if you do a ZZ SMR training, you're used to pressing the blue icon in our Brain Assistant and just say dynamic mapping, continue. I need to place the 1 channel on position ZZ. Now, let's say we want to do an analysis. Then we would go, and here I will pull my Brain Assistant up. Then we wouldn't do a training session. We want to do a recording session. We want to do an analysis. And if you want to do an analysis, well, how our software needs to know where will I place the electrode. You need to tell in advance. With the training session, if you choose a ZZ SMR, then basically the software tells you, well, please place the electrode in the correct spot. And here's an example of a custom mapping, or generally a mapping. This, the right side, will be, for example, a cap that already has everything in place. But if you have, for example, 3 positions, you want to take a closer look: the mid lane, so frontal area, the central area, and the parietal area. This would be a custom mapping where we place the electrodes. So where you have a cap, a rubber cap, and then electrodes you need to place on the certain positions. This would be 8 positions. Of course, you can also say, okay, I want to create a custom mapping that has the F positions, C positions, and then P3, P4. It's up to you, whatever you like to create. And now here, depending on what mapping you have, you get different output. So what many guys of you are maybe used to is these heat maps or brain maps. So what we see is if you have the full 19 or 24 or even more channel cap, then of course you have this very fine thin layers, and it's the nice shades that you have. Okay, whereas a very intense area, so red or warm colors. If you have 8 channels with this mapping, of course, if you place them differently, then you have other positions. Then of course you can also see quite some nice things. It's not as detailed as this one. And yes, here, if you only have, for example, those 3 positions, it is not a very intense view of for a brain map. So if you create a brain map with 3 channels, it still is a brain map. But of course, people, when you sell them a brain map, or you talk about, hey, let's do a brain map today, they wouldn't expect this one. They would expect something around this one. So of course, depending on your clientele and the standard you want to set with just brain maps, you want to have more channels. But still, if you say, and also if you have a 19 channel device like the ANT Neuro 24, for example, the Eco 24, you can still say, I don't always want to use the entire cap. I just want to place 3 electrodes and even maybe just train on ZZ. Then you have this brain map. But today I want to show you our auto report that you can create. For that, let's move into our Brain Assistant. So let's say we have, doesn't matter which hardware, let's say we want to do a 3-channel recording. We go on record session. Now, what you want to do is you say, let's start recording. Of course, you can add some comments and write some stuff. Let's say, okay, we want to do FZ, ZZ, and PZ recording, okay? And say start recording. This looks different. I know I have a crazy amount of channels here because I'm running a recording in the background. So if you selected, for example, ANT Neuro devices, it will tell you what cap are you using. If you have a different device, then with different caps, then it will also show you this. And now this is here, and you see already custom. This is a view that will get interesting for you if you place electrodes freely. So if you say, today I'm going to go with this. Of course, you could go with F3, FC, F4. So whenever, and this is called custom mapping. So whenever you now say, I don't have a cap, I have cables laying around, I will place them somewhere. We need to tell. So you can say add new or say create. And now it makes sense to name it in the correct order. So channel 1 will be FC, channel 2 will be ZZ, and then we have PZ. And now, of course, what we need to tell, and I went over this in other webinars as well, so I'm going to go rather fast. Let's say channel 1 equals position FZ. That's it. Channel 2 is going to be position ZZ, and channel 3 is going to be PZ. Of course, if we have a hardware that only supports 2 channels, here we have a problem. Let's say save, and we select this one. So hereby I will promise the software, I will make sure, select, position 1 is on FC, channel 2 is on ZZ, and channel 3 is on PZ. I already have a signal, of course, because I have some running in the background, a recording. If you're not sure if you did it in the right order, just place every electrode and then move to the patient, the client, and just goof around with this one electrode, and you would see where you have a bad signal, where you have an artifact, so you can make sure, okay, the correct channel is in the correct position. So now we think in channels that transfer into positions. And let's say start. I will come to the part there's 2 webinars where I talk about this button here, a flow. So you can start a flow. I will come to that later in this webinar briefly. So when you press that button, you can here start a lot of different flows. I will come to the part. The flow means on your client screen, the second screen, now there's an automatic order of segment setting. Let's do this manually. So let's say, okay, to your client, please keep your eyes open, don't talk, and look straight forward. Here on the left side, we can say start segment. So this would be here is undefined, would be considered an eyes open segment. And I will come to it, but I would at least try to get 3 minutes of eyes open. I will come later to the part, how many minutes is the minimum requirement, what are you aiming for usually. Let's say, okay, stop segment, please close your eyes and keep your eyes closed. Then we can say eyes closed segment. Again, I will come to the part. What we need for our auto report is at least one eyes open and one eyes closed segment. This is what we need. Everything else will be a nice bonus. So stop segment. Now we have two different segments and say finish and save. And all you now need to do, or can do after this webinar, is go to the client we just recorded. Here we will see our recording. This was today, the 6th of June. Here, this was my comment. Go and show details. And I know you're used to, or some people are used to EEG data. Check out the EEG signal. We can create brain maps manually, right? Say add, go on relative power. And of course, here we change the scaling. So it's all, and you can add it to a report. So this is all very nice. But now with the auto report, you just go on overview. You say generate auto report. And these are some I was goofing around. You will just have to press full report. Let's press it. Now you need to wait. It will also automatically now find artifacts and mark them. So here it might take a few minutes, well, depending on what hardware you used. And now what it did, this is my report. It opened this report as a PDF. This is now a 28 pages report, automatically created. So let's scroll down. It shows me, okay, some basic client info. It shows me eyes open, just 18 seconds, eyes closed, 15 seconds. Of course, this will be not real results, doesn't make too much sense. It shows me the positions. Hardware I used was an EDF reader, so a background playback. And now this is how the auto report looks like. The auto report has a score overview. So we have different types of scores. I will come to that part in a second. There's more categories. So depending on how many positions we have, you have a different amount of categories. Let's switch to my slideshow. This is the report, the maximum amount of categories you can get out. And in this amount, we have several scores that deal with focus, so it's called focus score in brackets theta, focus score theta beta ratio, focus score alpha. We also have some alpha 1 to alpha 2 ratio. We have the mu rhythm, sensor performance score, so different types of score. We have some values and we have a short description text. So in this one page you print out for your client, you have a pretty nice overview, and all they have a certain well, I would say grade or a certain quality to it. The quality doesn't mean the signal quality. So it means, you know, everything in the green area means, okay, this is pretty good. This is what we would expect. By the way, this example is also just a very short simulated data thing. So it's not a real report. Then we have yellow, which means you're kind of in the middle, and red means, let's take a closer look. Maybe we can find a good training protocol for you. So this is what pops out. What else? We're going to take a closer look. What else is in the protocol? We have an overview. Once we scroll down, we have some, disclaimer. We have frequency bands explanations, and we have some brain maps. We have more brain maps. We have more brain maps. And here, as I say, you don't have to print all these pages, because with in this case, with 3 positions, maybe this will not be too entertaining, but this is why we have some FFT analysis, might be interesting for you. And this is why we now have these longer categories. And here we see this green value that we see with one single line or with one single category here. It then transfers into, and this is where I can skip, into an entire page. And in this page, we have, for example, the focus score theta. It will be explained here in the first paragraph on what positions did we measure here, FC and ZZ. Not the entire report, but to create this category, we took into account FC and ZZ. So we describe what we measured very transparently. We then have a score where we say, okay, the base value was 28.6, which means you are in the red zone, the red category. And depending on what categories of those 3 you are, you get a certain text block. So when it's yellow, green, or red, it's different text blocks. And then we show you just that one brain map that makes sense in this category. And of course, it's based on our experience we have, but of course also based on references. So it's very transparent, and people can say, okay, I want to look this up. It's not, I think, too overwhelming to have this one page, but you can print this out. You can take some notes on it and show this to a client, and also have it for yourself and learn some stuff. So depending on the score, this will also be a different text block. Here in this example, of course, the brain map is more than 19 channels, so it's very smooth and it has all areas, more than just the relevant one, so more than just FZ and ZZ, but in the one I just created, it has those 3 dots and it's very blue, so not a lot of theta, so it's in the green area, so it's a different text block here. So it gets the brain map automatically, but still I think with this view you can also get some nice insights, and also for yourself learn a little bit about why would we choose what training protocol and what can we see, and also measure. This is why it said first in brackets, do some in-between assessments. So let's say this with a full 19 channel cap was your first assessment, but after 3 sessions you say, okay, in this training I will place 3. Also with an Ego 24, for example, you can get this sort of a report if you only have 3 channels. Now, depending on, as I said, depending on the hardware you use, and this is now an overview of the report, you will all be able, when you have the Brain Assistant, to use. I will show you how to use it and how to press that one button. If you have, in this scenario, a mapping of FZ, ZZ, and PZ, so 3 positions, for example, with the Neurobit Optima 4, of course, there's the Neurobit Optima 2, then you only have 2 positions, so would be even less. Then, and you see, it's a little see-through, but not completely. Out of the full report, the maximum amount of categories, here you would get out the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you have artifacts, so 6 very interesting categories. So still a lot for a 3 position analysis that you can do. So as I said, you can always also use a device that has more channels but just attach 3 channels. If you have 8 channels or more, it kind of makes sense to add the frontal area, frontal asymmetry, for example, F3, F4. We can take a closer look. This would be here, this category that is now available. The mu rhythm would be C3, C4. This is also something that is very attractive. So if we go back, here you see those 2 because we don't have frontal left to frontal right is not available. So here we will add some, we have some more categories available. And of course, if you have the full 19 channel, we have all these categories available, plus of course the heat map, the brain map. I think here I have some, here this would be an 8 channel. Here we go. This would be an 8 channel report. This is how the brain map, of course, then looks compared to the full 19 plus channel recording. So this is something you can now play around with. And one very important thing when people say, okay, I have this software and I have the other software, and they pop out all these different reports, there's not the one and only report. These reports, for example, I think they're pretty nice. Of course, we're working on other categories as well, and it also depends, is the patient or a client in a good mood today, very tired? Of course, also then the results will vary a lot. But here you can get a pretty decent report. Try it yourself. But very important, if there's no data, there's no report. And this is a question I addressed before. Some people say, well, how does a first assessment work in your clinic? What do you do? There's tons of different variations. Of course, there is some flows. So with the button I showed you in the top right that we use, there's different ones, but one I would strongly recommend to you is this flow that goes around 20 minutes. Again, of course, if you have a person that has, is moving a lot, or it says I want an intense interpretation of different data when I'm sitting in a chair for 45 minutes, this can all be different. But one, I think, very good compromise of the client doesn't have to spend too much time sitting in a chair, getting tired or getting angry or frustrated, is this one. We have a 1 minute once you start a flow, and the flow is the one, as I told you, if you go in a recording situation, if you go in a recording situation, here in the top right, you can select a flow, and the one flow I will give to you after this webinar, and you can download it, will be, it says Erstgespräch, it's German, sorry, it should be, I know I have a lot of flows. It will say initial consultation, it says B, then 3, 3, I, 2, 2, D is German, E, N is English. And what does that mean? And this is something I can recommend to you. It means we have B for baseline. So you say, okay, let's start. How a flow works, I explained in a different webinar. You have an Xbox controller linked to your computer. You turn it on, and then you start the flow. It will open automatically on the second screen your client sees. Once you press the start, it's all on the client screen. Give it a try. It will create automatically 1 minute baseline eyes open. Why? If we don't want to even pay attention to that baseline eyes open, we want to pay attention to the 3 minutes. Well, some people start to scratch their heads, move the electrodes, ask some questions, even though you said, please don't talk, please just sit there still, don't create too many artifacts. So we have 1 minute that the client can get used to the situation, and then it says on the screen, thank you, 1 minute is over. Please press A on your Xbox controller to continue. So you don't even have to do anything. Then we have 3 minutes of eyes open, which is pretty nice. People usually don't drift off too fast, but of course, if they tend to be a person that drifts off into different thoughts, 3 minutes is also a good compromise that you will see that in an EEG. Then after 3 minutes, it will say, please close your eyes, keep them closed. You will hear a ding sound if 3 minutes are over. And then we have 2 stressors. We have different tests, up to 5 tests in our BrainAssistant. It's also available for everybody. I explained this in a different webinar. I like to use the CPT test, so it's a reaction test where when you see a circle, when you see a circle on your screen, then you have to press a button. If you see a square, you don't have to press something. So it tests impulsivity control, it tests reaction time. Then I like the Stroop test. It's with colors. You see a word in a certain color, and you need to select, is it written in yellow, blue, red? And then we have, after the stressor, which is pretty stressful, sometimes also to watch, then we have 2 minutes of eyes open again and 2 minutes of eyes closed. The auto report will just take the first 2 segments, eyes open, eyes closed. Our auto report, of course, we have different ones. Still, this might be nice for also analyzing in a deeper matter what happened there. So you can, of course, also create manual reports still. So this is, I think, a nice compromise of not too long of a recording. I know some people say I need at least 10 minutes eyes open and then do 10 minutes eyes closed. Now here's something, I want to keep it easy in this webinar. A minimum thing for this auto report I just showed you, minimum requirement is 3 minutes eyes open, 3 eyes closed. We should get that. I know some people say I have clients, they cannot even sit still for 1 minute. Then record 1 minute and give it a try with the auto report. It will create an auto report, but the data will not be super valid. But this is something we should at least get. I just showed you before how you can manually create segments, and this is something we need to get out. Generally, if you can do that, of course, if you have a 7-year-old kid, I don't know if they can keep their eyes closed for a long amount of time. Just give it a try. This is why you learned here how to perform this. But I think this is pretty sweet to have these 2 stress interventions. Also, the auto report will display, if you do these tests, the CPT, it will also automatically display the test results. So this is pretty cool. So it will automatically be added on the report after the categories. Now, one thing for some people that already opened the BrainAssistant, and it's Thursday. So I think Tuesday it was available. There's a new update available. So on the top right on your BrainAssistant here, where it's running in the background. Here, the top right, now I have all my updates, but here it should say update available if your computer has internet. Do the update and it will update your the tests that are implemented in the flows. So some people that have been using our flows, they know, oh, when the CPT test, this is what, for people that don't know it, if you start a flow and the CPT, the reaction test pops up, then it, back in the day, just said start. And so when you press start and you're not used to what you have to click on the Xbox controller, then of course it already counts as a very slow reaction time. And to prevent this, now, once you've done that update, your clients can press Y button, and then it shows you the test starts, and it has a 15-second countdown. After 15 seconds, it will jump back to this window. If you say, I still don't get the test, press Y again, and you can practice the test a little bit so you can get used to the control. The same for the Stroop test. So for people that know these tests, it's going to be, or it is a pretty sweet implementation now. And so use those tests to the update, and that's a pretty cool test. Besides EEG data, if you say, oh, hey, you have a pretty fast reaction time, but a very high commission error, so you make a lot of mistakes, your impulsivity control is a little off, maybe practice a little bit, holding back, thinking about should I press yes or no. So this is also a nice update feature. You should try that. What do we have as next steps? Because we're almost at the end. The next steps is please update your Brain Assistant. Now you have to import the flow, so the first initial assessment flow, and I will show you how in a second. And you have to import the report bata file. The .bata file, for some people that don't know it, I can send you the flow, I can send you the report template, so that you need to be able, because if you're in your version and you open a file and you want to press generate auto report, this might be empty or nothing will happen, because you need the information. The auto report needs to be on your computer. For that, you need a certain file, like a .pdf. In our program, the Brain Assistant is called .bata. These two files I will send you, for everybody that is in this webinar, via email. It should be on my email list. If you're not, you can email me. And here is something as well. In the chat window where you're gonna be able to ask questions, I will post this right now at this very moment. So in your chat window, there's a Google Drive link, and this Google Drive link, there are the .bata files. Just download them and press in your main menu, import. Here's also the Google Drive link. Press import, and then you can select the .bata files. They will pop up. In your case, you need to download, of course, the report file, and you will have to download the initial consultation file. Now, what is next? Once you've updated Brain Assistant, you imported the flow and the report, you need to create custom mapping, as I showed you. For example, FZ, CZ, PZ. If you have, for example, an Eco24 or another hardware that has 19 channels plus, I would suggest with the first adjustment, always use the entire cap. But still, maybe also in between, before a training session, you do want to do a short assessment with few channels. Then record sessions. So don't just do training sessions, also go with the green button to just do an assessment, record a session, and then create those reports. Of course, if you have the wrong channels, for example, if you do, for this, for example, you need FZ and ZZ. Now, if you do a mapping that has F7 and T3 and none of these categories, measure anything or do anything at these positions, then this will be an empty page. You can also give this a try, but still we need some positions to give you some info, right? You cannot interpret anything out of one single position at a random place. So give this a try, maybe follow these steps in the webinar, and then create some auto reports. It's going to be a lot of fun, I promise. Now, before we go to questions, almost done. One thing I also want to explain, I had this question after the German webinar. Let's say you don't want to do a recording session, you do want to do something different. You say, I want to do a training session, but because I don't want to do this and spend 20 minutes, you can do the following. Do a training session, select, and usually you would say dynamic mapping or something. I know it depends. You can say custom mapping, FZ, ZZ, PZ. For example, you can also do 8 channels, depending on your hardware, and still do, and now I said FZ, PZ, ZZ, so you cannot do a C3 protocol. You can do ZZ, select protocol, say start. In the background now here, this is the training channel, and we still have all channels. So these are the 3 channels. Before you start a game, you can say start segment, please keep your eyes open. Do this for 3 minutes. Say, please close your eyes. After 3 minutes, say stop and say, okay, now we will start. And then you start your application. And so afterwards, once you say finish and save session, you can of course also create out of this recording an auto report. So it doesn't have to be, you see, this will create a report. It doesn't have to be this green just recording session. So some people they say, okay, I'll do it right before I do a training. So here you see, this is what I just did. it's crazy scores because it was just a few seconds. You could do that, but to be honest, I would recommend if you do a clean assessment, especially in the beginning, do a recording session, because then in the client here, it will show in the record, oh, green means I just did a recording. So I probably paid a lot of attention to data quality, because here it might not be visible that you did an eyes open, eyes closed recording. So one very important info is the next webinar. It will be, I also need a break. I have vacation in Italy, so please give me that. On August 1st will be the next English webinar, and it will be a new topic, First Assessments and Auto Report Volume 2, because there's tons of more of stuff to talk about, because I just showed you this one auto report template, and I know some people say, what about a Y shape? So F3, F4, ZZ, PZ, because then we have alpha asymmetry, but some things are just calculated on FZ. So if I drop this one, I have a problem. I know there's different types of positions, different information, and there's a lot more than just these auto templates. So how to do assessments in between assessments, first assessments, and create auto reports. There's so much more to talk about. There needs to be a second webinar. We will keep it, as always, short and efficient. Of course, there's a lot of different websites you can visit, but you can go on YouTube, watch the webinar in probably 2 weeks or so. So we need to upload it first. And the follow-up email then will also send the Google Drive link around where you have the .bata files for the auto report. But here in the chat window, you already have it for all the live participants. Yeah, now it's time for questions. Who has questions? In the bottom right, there's a chat window. Type in some questions, and I will be happy to answer it. So who's brave enough? Yeah, are all the devices supported with the AutoMap? Yes, all devices that work with our Brain Assistant. I know this is fast now. I just took these 3 as an example, okay? So for example, a BrainBit also has channels. This one is a bad example though, because it does matter what device you have. It just is a matter of on what position did you record an EEG. So if you have a different device, like let's say you have a CGX, okay, then you just need to record on a position that the auto report, this very auto report, this specific one supports. So for this report, this one here, this version, you need at least, and this is why I showed you this one, FZ and ZZ. So if you just have ZZ, doesn't work. So if you have a hardware that, for example, you can record on FZ and ZZ, then it will be less categories because here we have parietal lobe. So for example, alpha regulation, I think it needs PZ. But if you have a different hardware, of course, it will work. We just need an EEG on this position. The hardware doesn't matter for me. So sure, if you have a hardware that has positions that pop up in this auto report, it will work. And you need an eyes open, eyes closed segment. So if you just have a segment that says training or intervention or something, then the auto report looks for eyes open and eyes closed. So it needs to be named that way. Hope this answered the question. So yes, sure, of course. You're welcome. So with this one here, you see this covers the occipital and the temporal lobe. This will not work. But if you have the BrainBit where you can place the electrodes on other positions, then it will work. Yes. And this might be something coming up in the next webinar, volume 2, with different templates for other positions as well. But it needs to make sense that some positions to pop out a certain category. So do we do a recording and auto reports with the Nexus 32? So at this point, I don't know when people are going to watch the webinar. With the Nexus device, we don't get the raw EEG. So with Nexus devices, we don't get this one. We don't get raw EEG because Nexus device has its own software, and all we get is amplitude values. So how much theta, how much high beta, etc. There's also another webinar where I explained this from last year. So what you would have to do is you would have to record in the Nexus software and then export the raw EEG and then press import. And when you press import, you need to import the recording. Then it might work. Sorry, with all devices, except with the Nexus device, it's that easy, all within the Brain Assistant. That makes a lot of sense. With Nexus devices, you need to do a little bit of a workaround. Linda, can I create a map from a qEEG EDF plus file I already have so I can compare current and past? This is the question about the Nexus. So nice, Linda, thank you. Yes, so when you have an EDF file, EDF means this is the file format for EEGs. So for example, you have a Nexus device, you do in the Nexus software a recording, then you export an EDF or EDF plus file, you just press import. When you press import, then it will say, okay, here, where's an EDF file? You import that EDF file, and then you should be able, if you have that EDF file, I only have few clients, you can open that recording file, and you need to make sure that in this EEG data, there's an eyes open, eyes closed file. So when you import something, an EDF file that you recorded, for example, or EDF plus file recorded with a Nexus software or any other, and you import it and it's empty, then here there's no segment that says eyes open, eyes closed, then the report will not work because it's looking for eyes open, eyes closed. How can we solve this? We can now say at 30 seconds, the patient was ready. Start segments. Even though this is a recording, you can then just say, okay, from here to here, or even easier, we type in something, okay, let's say up to 59 seconds, check, and define it as eyes open. And then of course we need an eyes closed segment. Of course you need to know when the client closed his eyes. So you say then start segment, this was eyes closed and it was this part. Yes, this is then possible and you can compare it. Can we do a flow with the Nexus 32? So with the Nexus 32, or generally with any Nexus device, we need at this, it's June 2024, who knows what's going to happen, but we cannot, if you switch this one to Mind Media, this will be gray because we do not get any raw EEG from Nexus devices. So you need to start BioTrace. Then in BioTrace, select the protocol that is connected to the Brain Assistant. I will not explain this now because there's another webinar where I explained this, the connection. Select the protocol that is connected and you can only do training session. And Linda, the training session, you can then start, and it will then, if you have the BioTrace running, skip all these parts here, skip all this because we have a protocol. Also this, you cannot select. It will then end up at, also not this, end up at this. Here, this is how it's looked because we get up to 4. And here, yes, you can start a flow, but you will only have this as a recording. So to do an auto report, I just showed you, we need raw EEG. So you will have to record in the Nexus software, export the EDF file, and then import it here. I know, sorry for that, but we don't have that connection between the software and hardware to get the raw EEG. Another question, what if the eyes open and eyes closed are separate recording files? Very good question. You go on this button, you go on settings, and then here we have something that is called, I need to find it, here, import eyes open, eyes closed, split EDFs. This and here should work. Of course, maybe you have a super crazy hardware that I've never seen in my life and they have a super strange format. You can always email us, but this is the button we built in for your question. And when you press this, it will pop up and then you select the files, the split files, and they will then create one merged file. If you have problems with that, of course, you can email us directly and then we can log onto your computer, or you can send us the 2 separate split EDF files and we can check does everything work and then come back to you. But here, settings, scroll all the way down, import eyes open, eyes closed, split EDFs. Yes. And also, yes, you're welcome. So I know with the Nexus device at this point, it will be a recording in their software, and then you export the EDF and import the EDF here. So working with the flow, when you have a Nexus 32, for example, I know this will not work. Yes, you're welcome. very nice to have these specific questions. One thing, if you have a few seconds, I had this question in the German webinar. So some people said, okay, I really like your report. Well, thanks. But one thing, for example, I don't like, I have this one page and I have this one. I don't like that page, let's say randomly, okay? Or I don't need this info. Then what you can do is, if you press here, create auto report, it will just create this one. But what you can do is say full report. Don't click it because then it will, I saw a question, 1 second. You need to press plus to add to report. And what will now happen is a very nice thing. It will not create a report. It will do the following. You go here in the top bar on report. And what you now see is this one, a link to rule-based elements. So what you now can do, I know it's named a little cryptic, but we can now session basic info. Of course, you need to know what it means. We can now throw this one out. We can now throw, say, EEG scores overview would be the map I just showed you. We can also throw this one out. Disclaimer, throw it out. So you can throw out whatever you like. I won't throw out everything, right? And here we have some EEG stats. We just want to get rid. We want to just see the title page and then the focus score, the theta page. Say PDF preview. And what it now does, now you need to be patient. Now we have this one and directly go to the focus score theta. You see this? So we threw out all the other stuff. Don't worry, you're not gonna change anything in the template, but this is how, and of course then you need to say save and open report, then it will create a PDF for you. And by the way, here in between you can say plus and say, I wanna add a nice text and say, hello, whatever, ABC. Or you can also say, create brain map, add, and do a custom brain map here and say, this is exactly the brain map I like, add to report. And if you have this one, or you have a raw EEG file and say, I like this one, add to report. There's other webinars on this specific stuff. And go on report. Here, this will also be included once you press PDF preview to refresh. This will then be in the report. Let's scroll down. Here it says, hello, ABC. Of course, you can do a page break and stuff. And then you have this one as well. So yes, the auto report template gives you one click and you have it right away, but just this tiny little thing plus will give you all possibilities you want. And as I said, there's also here a white space, new page, or you can even implement your own image, right? You can here say, okay, change or paste from clipboard. So there's tons of possibilities. This is why there's also a volume 2 in August 1st. You can do so much with this software. Update, import the flows and create those custom mappings and play around. And of course, there needs to be good data quality. Of course, there can be some results. Sorry, and then I'll stop talking. This was also just a very short recording. But if something is maxed out, the scale, so 100, it looks scary. But if the scale goes from 0 to X and you exceed that limit, of course, it will look red and 100. So sometimes, of course, it can look a little extreme. But it's a report that should show and will display data. So it will just give you info, period. Okay. So if there are no questions, thank you so much for being here. And I know a lot of faces here. You have our email address. You can always refer to the webinar. And some have my direct email addresses. Yeah, and hope to see you in August and wish you a nice summer. All right. So wherever you are around the world, here it's after 6 p.m. So I go and have my day off. The rest of you who's in America and Canada, have a good work day. So bye-bye.